Hey, indie filmmakers, I'm Nick Bodmer.
I'm Griffin Hammond, and on this week's episode, we take a look at the most popular cameras used by filmmakers at this year's South by Southwest Film Festival.
Plus, you sent us several technical questions about the Panasonic GH5, lenses, hard drives, and what audio mixer to hook up to your computer. Hello, Griffin, how are you?
I'm good.
Hey, let's jump right in with our new session called Ask Griffin.
All right.
This is a section of the podcast where you can tweet hashtag Ask Griffin and ask Griffin a non-filmmaking question. Today's question from John D. LeMay. Obviously, Griffin has spent some time in New York drinking establishments and inspired by craft cocktails for the video Hand Cut. Griffin, what is your go-to cocktail?
My go-to cocktail would be an old-fashioned.
And what is an old-fashioned?
An old-fashioned has like a whiskey, like bourbon or something. It has, what does it have, like bitters?
Sweet vermouth.
And it has
and bitters.
Sugar, right?
Sweet vermouth, right?
No, I don't think sweet. That's a Manhattan.
Oh, you're right. I am thinking of a Manhattan.
But I also like a Manhattan.
I like a Manhattan. I'm more of a Scotch neat kind of guy, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Griffin, that was our first hashtag Ask Griffin. That was pretty fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If you want to ask Griffin a non-filmmaking question on Twitter, hashtag Ask Griffin, and you could be selected. Moving on.
So I want to talk today about, neither of us got to go to the South by Southwest Film Festival.
I was waiting for my invite, but it never came from Griffin.
Yeah. I've been there in years past. I always loved that. And No Film School, a great website, always has lots of coverage of South by Southwest. And they put out an article where they actually asked 43 different filmmakers what cameras they use.
Yeah, this is very neat.
And people are always wondering, what kinds of cameras do actual filmmakers use, especially indie filmmakers? So here we have a great list, and we'll put this link in the show notes at Hey.film. But first one on here is a Canon 5D.
Sure was, but who's the big winner in this article? Like, I see a lot of red.
There weren't a lot of Canon 5Ds. Well, actually, there were 4 of them out of the 43.
Out of 40, yeah.
Yeah. The big one was the ARRI Alexa, which is to be expected.
How much is that camera, roughly?
I mean, I think it's in the 70,000 plus range. It's an expensive camera.
Without lenses, probably, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Have you ever used one?
Always... no, I don't think I've ever used an ARRI Alexa now. I'm not even sure I've ever seen one in person. But they are a popular choice among television producers. I imagine most of the Netflix shows are shot on ARRI Alexas. A lot of...
What is an Alexa Mini?
I actually don't even know. But
I see that one a lot on here, too.
5 of the 14 ARRI Alexas mentioned by these filmmakers were Alexa Minis.
Red Dragon.
If I had to guess,
it's
probably like any
right?
other camera where they're able to get the technology a little bit smaller.
Do we see any Panasonic cameras on here?
Yeah, let's see. There was one mention of the GH5. Let me figure out where that was.
Escape is the film by Karina Harchandadi. Why did I try and say that name? That's not even close to right. I apologize. But the movie Escape.
Yeah. She said she used it because it allowed the film to have an in-depth quality.
I'm not sure what that means.
Red cameras were also popular. There were Red Dragons, Red Epics, Red Scarlets, Red Ones used. The Black Magic cameras were also popular. A few Ursa Minis.
Seeing some Sonys on here too. Sony is representing.
Yeah, I think if you had to make like a top 5 list, I think the Sony A7S II makes it in there. 4 different filmmakers in this list of 43 filmmakers said they used it on their films. And then the Canon 5D was used 4 times as well.
Very interesting.
Some other data analysis I did, just looking through this article, just kind of tabulating it. I wanted to be honest with the numbers, and there's 43 filmmakers, but there are more than 43 cameras because 7 shoots used 2 cameras.
Which makes sense.
2 different kinds of cameras.
2 different kinds of cameras. So I would assume many of these had multiple bodies, right?
One filmmaker simply responded that they used, quote, a DSLR.
I saw that as well, but I believe it's for a stop motion film, so that's kind of why I think they said that.
Yeah.
Because they were shooting
could have at least
photos.
said what it was.
We don't want to know.
This was actually very non-specific. They said, we used a DSLR camera with the original lens. Like,
classic.
Maybe it's a kit lens, maybe it's a built-in, maybe it's like a power zoom kind of camera.
That's somebody who is focused on the art and not the technology, which is to be applauded, I think.
And then in the headline of the article, Christopher Boone, the author, points out that this is Alexas. There were lots of Alexas, all the way to 1980s JVCs.
Wait, what? I missed that one.
The title of the article is From Alexas to 1980s JVCs. One filmmaker used 3 1980s era like studio cameras
to capture the feel of a late 80s multicam comedy. Yeah.
So these were 3 CCD chips, very different than what a lot of these cameras are using now. And then after they edited the whole thing in 4:3, yeah, what did they do?
Well, before that, they used the cameras to shoot, but they were immediately outputting it to an SSD recorder, so they didn't actually have to deal with VHS. Right. But they were using the camera's imager.
Right.
Oh, and then they bounced the final cut back to VHS after editing to give it a naturally degraded look.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, and also one person in this list did shoot film. There was an ARRI 16 millimeter camera in there.
So out of 43, we have one filmmaker.
Right.
Oh wait,
yeah,
no,
this harkens back to that.
That's not where we came down to.
This is like the bonus episode we did a few weeks back where someone suggested that I'm not a filmmaker because I don't shoot on film.
And neither are any of these videographers.
Right. At the time, I looked at the Oscar, the best picture or the best cinematography winners, and I think a couple of them in the last 10 years had used film. But even, I mean, this list here is probably even more DIY and low budget, and people are definitely not using film for the most part.
You know, we haven't talked about the Oscars. Any thoughts post Oscars?
Well,
what's your hot take?
I'm trying to remember who won best cinematography.
I believe it was Blade Runner, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, Roger Deakins.
And this was the first time win, right?
This was his first win, yeah, and this was also the first time a woman was nominated.
Mudbound, Rachel Morrison. What was your favorite movie of all the Best Picture nominees?
I did a bad job this year of watching many of them. I saw I, Tonya. That one was fun. I guess...
Let's run through them. Shape of Water, did you see it?
I saw Shape of Water. And I was glad to see Allison Janney won Best Actress for her performance.
I was so excited for Allison Janney. You know, I'm a West Wing fan, so she's my favorite.
And that was her first win.
It was big. Did you see Call Me By Your Name?
I did. That was a good film.
I didn't see that one. Darkest Hour?
I did not see that.
That was pretty good.
I feel like you're going to go through this list, and I haven't seen most of them.
Dunkirk?
I did see Dunkirk.
That was good. Get Out?
I still haven't seen Get Out.
And you got to watch Get Out.
I need to. I'm excited that Jordan Peele won
it was so good.
Best Original Screenplay.
It was. I thought it was going to win Best Picture. I liked it so much.
Yeah, that's definitely the next one I'll watch.
Lady Bird was great, I thought.
Still got to see that.
Phantom Thread, I did not see.
See, we used to... When we would do our Oscar parties and we would compete against each other, we used to make a point of watching all the films before that party, trying to screen a few every week, and I just haven't done that in recent years.
Did you see The Post?
Nope.
I heard that was boring, so I kind of moved it down my list. Which
that one I'm interested in just because
it's Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep and directed by Steven Spielberg, so you'd assume it's great, but I heard it was kind of boring.
And the Washington Post is the one news organization that I pay to get news from. I respect the Washington Post a lot.
I pay them and New York Times, but that's neither here nor there. And the last but not least, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
I did see that one. enjoyed that.
I thought that was phenomenal.
Yeah. And Sam, what's his name?
Sam Rockwell.
Best Supporting Actor. That was our segment on two guys kind of remember what happened at the Oscars.
2 weeks ago. I did play the Oscar game, by the way, with some friends here, and I destroyed. I was so good.
Yeah.
But most people hadn't seen like any of the movies, so they were mostly guessing.
Yeah. I also noticed your daughter was playing.
She was on the scoreboard, but did not actually participate.
Okay.
She and the other girls decided to go play with toys instead.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Not a problem.
See, your game was not fun enough.
Yeah. Boring game, Dad.
So our questions today, we actually have, I think, 4 in a row that are all about the GH5. So
Boom,
buckle
boom,
up for
boom,
that.
boom. 4.
You want to read the first one from Geo?
I sure do. It's from Geo. I'm currently debating whether I should get a GH5, a GH5S, or G9. I wonder if you could help. He's already got a GH5 or G85, and he'd like to upgrade. The ISO performance boost of the GH5S is nice, but not essential, and the same applies to the GH5 with in-body image stabilization. I shoot both photos and videos, which is why I'm a bit unsure about the GH5S. The G9 is ideal for photos, and video is not bad, but it's not as good as the other two.
So have you seen the G9?
No.
It's interesting because it's clearly marketed towards photographers. It can do a few interesting things, like it can effectively shoot an 80 megapixel image by, I think, capturing.
Is that one of those sensor shifting things?
Yeah. And then it also clearly it's for photographers because they've added the little LCD on top that you get on some photography cameras that kind of gives you, your
quick
your
info
aperture
on your settings and things like that.
Yeah, which is not something I care about, but it's a good camera. But I think for Geo, it kind of depends on what he wants to be, because it seems like all these cameras are marketed to 3 different kinds of people. The G9 is marketed to photographers. That's where its strong skills are. The GH5S is clearly marketed to filmmakers. They took away some photo features to give it more filmmaking features. And the GH5 seems to be sitting nicely in the middle, where Panasonic is hoping that both filmmakers and photographers buy it. So I feel like if he's saying that he shoots both photos and videos, right there, that's the answer. He should probably get a GH5.
GH5. Yeah, I think that is good advice. Yeah, why not, right?
The only thing
the only time you're going to
consider...
use that... Go ahead. We're talking over each other. My apologies.
Well, you have the G85. He already has the G85, and that one has in-body image stabilization, right?
Sure does, yep.
So if he's keeping the G85, part of me thinks another way to look at this would be you might want to get the GH5S if you're going to keep both, and that way you at least have one camera with in-body image stabilization, and then use your other one for super dynamic range and low light.
But if you're only going to have one camera, if you're going to sell the G85, then the GH5 might be the best compromise.
I think so, yeah.
And is the GH5 such a huge upgrade over the G85? I mean, the G85 is pretty good. I mean, I'm biased because I'm shooting on it, but...
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't know. You may not be able to put Vlog on a G85. I'm guessing the G85 can't do 10-bit 422.
Yeah. So if those are important features to you, I think look at the GH5. But you've got a great camera, the G85, and you might wait another year or so and see what the next thing's going to be. Yeah,
because they are only like incremental upgrades that you probably will barely notice, but if that's something you really feel like you're lacking.
Sometimes that money's better put towards glass than just upgrading the body incrementally. Next question.
Here's a Facebook message from Asaja in Sweden, and this is an easy question. Hey Griffin, can I uninstall my GH5 Vlog and put it on a new GH5 instead? Nick, if you had to guess.
I'm going to guess no.
You're correct. I asked Panasonic, and yep, you can't take it off. I actually don't know why you'd want to take it off unless you like broke a camera, but maybe that's what happened.
We got an email from Hugh. He says he's having one hell of a time figuring out the best video autofocus settings on my GH5. What do you think? What do you use? And what settings you're using.
So he mentions that he's watched some videos and he wants it explained to him in kindergarten terms, starting with what happens after you turn the camera on. So here, let me pick up my GH5. I'll turn it on, and I realize what's probably confusing to him is that there are 4 distinct places where you can control autofocus or turn it, change the settings. One of them would be on the lens, so make sure if you want to use autofocus, you are on the AF switch if your lens has one.
Not all do.
There's that other dial in the back of the camera, the thumb dial, that can switch between AFS and MF. And so be in MF if you want to be in manual focus mode, AFS if you want autofocus. Another place you should go is in the quick menu.
Now, real quick, is that switch should have 3 things, right? MF, AFS, and AFC? Or do you not have AFC?
No, it has AFC, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And
but
AFC
you're on AFS.
Yeah, AFC only matters for photos.
Okay.
AFC is continuous autofocus while you're pushing down the shutter. So like if you're in burst mode and you want it to continually change focus while you're burst photoing.
Doing sports or birds or something like that where the distance is changing while you shoot a burst.
Right. That's what AFC is for.
Got it.
AFS just stands for autofocus single. And then MF is manual focus. But to confuse this even more, when you're in AFS, autofocus single, you can do what's called continuous AF while you're in video. And so you have to go to the menu and turn on continuous AF. That's if you want the focus to actually change while you're rolling. Which I actually
for
never
the
want
most
that.
part, I'm guessing we don't use for the type of video we produce, right?
I don't use it, but a lot of people say they want it for vid blogging. Or vlogging. I'm still using the old Justin Johnson term, vid blog. But I don't like that, so I turn off continuous AF. And then finally, Q menu, quick menu, the function 2 button, you can actually go in and change what style of autofocus you're using. You could do face detection, you could do single area, or a bunch of other things.
And which do you use?
I use single area. That's the one I like. So here's a related email from Rick, who asked about, I've actually gotten this question from a lot of people about this hack that you can apparently do on the GH5 to improve the autofocus. And a lot of people have been talking about how to improve autofocus on the GH5 because it is a contrast-based system, which sometimes works really well, sometimes it's kind of slow. I've always been happy with it because I use AFS single, and and I don't have continuous AF turned on, so I'm only focusing at the start of my shots. And for me, it works just fine. But some people want even faster, like face tracking autofocus. And there's this weird thing that's going around that people are talking about where apparently if you lower the shutter angle, it works faster. Doesn't that sound crazy? Yeah.
It does sound crazy. It sounds like a bug or just a weird firmware thing.
Well, I can only barely follow the theory behind it, but I watched the original video that talks about this, and the idea is essentially that by just lowering the degree, even 1 degree, down to 179 degrees, suddenly the camera has time to complete an autofocus check during one half of the frame, and it has enough time to then do it again in the second half of the frame. So you're getting like double the data per second just by clearing up a little bit of extra space in that timing for the camera to do that process. So some people swear by shooting at 179 degrees or like 120, anything below 180 to get there. I can't say for sure if that works. It's not something I use, and Panasonic won't say if it improves anything. But Rick's question is, if I wanted to do that, what do I need to understand about how is that affecting my motion blur? Is this a problem? Like if he was going to drop to 120.
Well, 120 is going to give you more motion blur, right?
Yeah. Or no.
But not
actually, no, it's the other way. It'll be less motion blur.
Oh, like a 90-degree shutter angle would be faster.
Yeah, yeah. A 90-degree shutter would be
Oh, and
having
a 360-degree shutter angle would be the entire frame rate.
Right, so if we're shooting 30 frames
Got
per
it.
second, a 360-degree shutter would be a full 1/30th of a second shutter. 90 degrees would be half of, or it'd be 1/120th of a second,
Gotcha.
because it would be a quarter of the time.
So 120 degree would be slightly less motion blur, but probably not super noticeable would be my guess.
Yeah, I doubt
you
you'd
might notice it.
too much, although you already notice, especially if you're shooting in like 24 frames per second, you already get some jitter if you're doing a lot of like moving shots, slider shots, jib shots. I would think 120 would hurt you there. If you're doing a lot of those kinds of like perfectly up and down or side to side movements, that's where you might notice the problem. But if you're not, if what you shoot isn't a lot of motion, then I wouldn't worry about it too much.
We got a YouTube comment from Daniel Rollinson. I've only ever used Canon lenses on Canon bodies, like with Sony gear. Likewise with Sony gear. I'm curious to hear your experiences mixing different brands of cameras and lenses. How well do they fare in comparison to using a Sony lens on a Sony body? You ever mix and match, my friend?
I have. I haven't used Sony lenses on Sony bodies, but I do like to use Panasonic lenses on Panasonic bodies because in my experience, the native lenses do have better autofocus, that they just communicate better. I have had in the past, I used a Tokina lens designed for Canon on a speed booster on the GH5, and it was a great lens, but it just, one, it was like bigger than I needed it to be because it's made for a bigger camera, and also the focus was a little bit slower, and it also seemed like it wasn't as sharp as my native glass, so I've just kind of liked sticking with the native gear.
In terms of Panasonic, I use Olympus lenses as well. Now, obviously, Panasonic and Olympus both do micro four thirds, so they're kind of designing to the same standard. So I've had a lot of luck with Olympus lenses on my Panasonic bodies.
Yeah. And yeah, I got to think that the Canon lenses probably work better on Canon bodies, and the Sony lenses work better on Sony bodies. It's like the way Apple controls their software, and it just works better on their hardware. So here's an email we got from Warren. He was referencing the episode that we did last week where you were at home and I was at our alma mater, Illinois State. And I interviewed on the episode Matt Shivers, who is a voiceover artist. And Warren points out that Matt mentioned the importance of, quote, the signal chain in overall audio quality. And so that got him thinking about his own signal chain, that he uses a Sennheiser MD 421 microphone, and that's a $375 microphone. And he thinks it doesn't sound very good, and he's wondering if maybe his signal chain is the problem. And so I sent this over to Matt, and they had some back and forth, and Warren pointed out that he uses a Behringer Xenix 502 mixer, which I don't know anything about, but Matt pointed out that
it's
$40...
Behringer, so it's not very good.
Is the Behringer stuff not
makes
good?
Behringer makes low end stuff for sure.
Oh, okay. Although I'm thinking about, like, Matt used to have a Behringer B2 Pro microphone, and he's since moved on from it, but I was very happy with that microphone for Sriracha.
Okay, yeah, they make little mixer boards that you see all over the place with like cheap bands and stuff, but their low end stuff is definitely low end.
Yeah. Well, and when I clicked on that product, I realized this looks exactly like the mixer I used to have when I was in college.
Exactly.
Something just like it, yeah. Well,
exactly.
And as Matt Shivers pointed out, you have a $400 mic going into a $40 audio interface, so that could be, there's an imbalance there. And so he actually recommends something called the Focusrite Scarlett. Specifically, he recommends the model, the 2i2. I'll put this we'll put both this microphone and the Focusrite Scarlett in the show notes at Hey.film if you want to check these out. But that is a $150 device?
I don't know.
Or yeah, $150 is what the 2i2 costs. But the first thing I noticed about these is I think that Focusrite is a USB interface, which makes sense. That would probably be a smart way to plug mixers into computers, right?
Yep.
I think that $40 Behringer is like a 1/4-inch output.
Oh gosh, yeah. You want to get to a digital input into the computer if you can.
I did notice that Warren's microphone, the Sennheiser MD421, it sounded familiar to me, and so I looked at it and realized it's the microphone that we used the one time you and I did an episode together in the YouTube space.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
They gave us a couple Sennheiser MD421s to record on.
If you're looking for another USB audio interface, I like the Tascam US-2x2. It's like $150. Sounds pretty good, I think. We'll have to ask Matt what he thinks of that one.
And the last thing that Matt recommended is to get a balanced XLR cable, because he's wondering if that's not what you're currently using, try a balanced one and see if that makes any difference.
And I would guess it is, because that's an XLR interface, so you'd have to have a kind of a weird cable, unless maybe that Behringer doesn't have XLR inputs or something.
I think it does have XLR input.
Okay.
Yeah. Our final question today is from Droy Media. You know who Droy Media is,
Droy
right?
Media? The Droy Media took the time to reach out to us?
The Adam Ron.
Hey, Adam. How are you?
Who was on the show last week. So he had a question for us. He's upgrading his storage capacity with some new hard drives this year, and he's wondering what would be some good options to consider. I would prefer speed and reliability and redundancy over size. Other considerations, 8 terabyte-ish, sub $1,000 if possible, and Mac friendly.
What am I going to say, Griffin? Just answer for me.
A RAID. Why do I not remember which RAID you use?
Come on. It's not RAID. I mean, RAID's part of it, but that's not the acronym we're looking for.
And a network attached storage?
NAS. It's NAS time, Adam. It's time to get a NAS. I was just selling one. You really missed out on a deal. So I will give 2 suggestions. Well, sub $1,000, so actually that gives you a ton of room to do something. Synology makes a great little 2-bay NAS. 2 hard drives go in. The data is mirrored to both, so if you lose a hard drive, you don't lose your data. You can put 2 8-terabyte drives in there, get 8 terabytes of usable storage. If you want to spend a little more, go a little more for a little more speed, you can go with a 4-bay. The same thing, if any one drive fails, you don't lose your data, but you get the size of 3 out of 4, so you go with like 4 4-terabyte drives and get 12 terabytes of usable space, which would be great. If you just want a single hard drive, external, Western Digital's My Book series, I think, is kind of the fastest single drive right now. You would just want to make sure you have a real good backup, maybe in the cloud or something like that. So look at the Synology 2-bay and 4-bay. Usually those are sold without hard drives, so you'd have to buy hard drives as well, and those do a lot of stuff. If you just want something simple, 8-terabyte Western Digital My Book's like $180 or something.
Cool. And why did you sell yours? Like, do you have something else?
I bought a new one. Yep. I needed more space. My old one wouldn't take 8-terabyte drives anymore. It maxed out at 6-terabyte drives, I think, and I was shucking all those 8-terabyte external hard drives, so I bought a bigger, better one. And I do a lot of stuff on it, so I needed something just a little bit faster. I'm running virtual machines and servers and all kinds of nonsense on there.
So do you now have a RAID that is effectively 24 terabytes of storage?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. Andy, what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know. Andy is upset about something.
Did you feed him?
Hey, get out of here.
We're doing a podcast, Andy. Andy wants to be on the podcast. Is he visible to the camera, or is he off camera?
No,
meowing?
he was like trying to climb up on the closet door for some reason.
Do you want me to get my cat and we could have like a cat podcast?
No. But I would like to introduce some other audio to you right now, Nick.
Oh, okay.
I have an interview that I conducted. So last week when I was in Illinois, and on the podcast we were talking about how I lived on your couch for $20 a month. Or
you sure did.
Rather, it cost me $80 a month because I was paying all the roommates.
3 of us. Oh, 4 of us, right.
Yeah.
Because you were the 5th and probably illegal roommate.
Are there Are there laws about sleeping on couches?
I don't
when
know.
You're
The
poor?
lease probably said we couldn't do that, but we're long since past all that.
Right.
Statute of limitations and all that.
Yeah. So this was in 2005. I moved in with you, and so for a semester I was just sleeping on your couch, as we talked about last week. But after the episode, I met up with our friend Matt Fry, and he pointed out to me that the way he remembers it is that he was never involved in this discussion about whether or not I would be allowed to live there.
Well, you didn't really know Matt then, did you? Was this kind of like when you
I
met?
guess I didn't know him very well then.
Yeah, I mean, we went to high school together, but yeah, we kind of became friends with Matt in college.
So then, to corroborate his story, later I also met up with our good friend Brett Welter.
Okay.
And here I have Brett on camera. I posed this to him that Matt didn't know what was, he wasn't.
Brett, of course,
he wasn't
being
consulted
yet
on this.
another one of the roommates at the time.
Yeah. So here's what Brett has to say.
Yeah, we may just said, of course, Griffin, come on over.
Without consulting Matt.
Without consulting Matt. That's a very real possibility. I think it probably made Matt's life worse because Matt was used to coming home and plopping on the couch and playing MLB The Show 2004 or whatever it was. And so he couldn't stay up late at night because it's like, Griffin's got to go to Betty Bye. And he had to go into his room.
So is that how you remember it?
I mean, it's so long ago, it's hard to say, but that sounds about right. Like, maybe me and Brett just thought we would ram the issue through the members of the apartment. Basically, once you were there, how are they going to say no?
Right, yeah. Well,
I don't remember it being contentious, though. They must have just been like, oh, that's annoying, but moved on with life.
Yeah. Well, 13 years later, I suppose we have the opportunity to apologize to Matt now.
Matt deserves no apology. He owes us so many more apologies than in return. It is a real imbalance. So don't get me started on shampoo or juice, okay? Let's just move on before I get frustrated.
All right.
Just kidding. I love my friend Matt.
That's all we have for today, and Andy is starting to get antsy, so I should go deal with him.
All right. We will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. I know we've done this already on my GH3, I think, but it's like different than I remember it. Like it flashes red in different places.
You're having some trouble is what you're saying.
No, it's working. It just looks strange to me.